Is it true what they say about Dixie? Does the sun really shine all the time? Do the sweet magnolias blossom round everybody's door? All the folks keep eating possum. He can't eat no more. Is it true what they say about Swanee? Does a dream by the stream seem so sublime? Do they laugh when they love? He do. Like they say in every song, if it's true, that's where we belong. Now, is it true what they say about this? Does the sun really shine all the time? Do the sweet magnolias blossom round everybody's door? And all the folks keep eating opossum, and they can't eat no more. Is it true what they say about Swanee? Does the stream by the stream seem so sublime? Yeah, do they laugh? Do they love like they say in every song? If it's true, that's where we belong. Yeah, folks, thank you. Y'all looking at a Southern band up here today. This whole band is from the South. Yeah. Over the piano, that's Bubba. On the bass, Bubba number 2. We just call him number 2. Back on the drums is little baby Bubba. And over here on the guitar, that's double Bubba. There's any Bubbas down here. Seriously, folks, Steve Willis, from Long Island, New York, at the piano. Give me a big hand for Steve. Charlotte, North Carolina, on the bass. Roddy Smith. Also from Charlotte, North Carolina, that's Tim Smith on the bass. Tim Smith. Von Roach from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, on the drum. There's that sun really shining all the time, and to the sweet magnolia blossom round everybody's door. All the folks keep old time, and they can't eat no more. Is it true what they say about Swahili? There's a drink by the stream seems so sublime. Do they love like they say in every song? And it's true, that's where we belong. very much, and good evening, good afternoon, I should say, here in beautiful Florida, in this wonderful city, Sarasota. Missed a turn again. Venice, we're in Italy. I think we went over there for the Olympics and just stayed. No, it's a wonderful city. It really is a beautiful town, and this is a return engagement, as you all know here. A little sad note, our big guy, Tom Cherry, that's always over here on my left, is always with us, and he's been with me for 25 years. And got a little serious case of some infection up there in Mobile, Alabama. He's in the hospital. It's a pretty serious condition. We're hoping he's doing better, but he's got a long way to go yet. He had an infection. What do you call it? A staph infection. And that's not good. And it's got into some of his vital organs, I should say. They're working with him, and we hope that he does well. Give him a little prayer. Big day. Anyway, Roddy Smith over here playing the guitar, doing a good job, as always. He's our friend from up there. And he and Tim, our bass player, are brothers. They're from Charlotte, North Carolina. And they're from a long line of musical families. That is, his uncle their uncle is one of the most well-known guitar players in the whole world. Back many years ago, he had a tune called Guitar Boogie. Arthur Smith. Guitar Boogie Smith. And his father was a fine musician, played the accordion and different instruments. He was a very funny comedian guy. And Arthur Smith, their uncle, wrote a very famous song. Most of you heard, I'm sure, many times, called Dueling Banjos. And a lot of other songs as well. Each year we have a thing. You know where Grandfather Mountain is up in North Carolina? Oh yeah, we go up there and do a little thing. It's called Singing on the Mountain. Oh, and I'll tell you, it was cold up there last year. Worse in Florida than down here when it's 20 degrees up. We played for the fair the other day up in Tampa, and they said it was be a cold day when they had me back the last time. They got a new venue up there. Have you been to the new one? Outside seats about 16,000 people. We had about 16 in there. Maybe 20. Anyway, it was about 45 degrees when we started the show. We didn't want to ask what it was when we quit. But we had fun with it anyway. But anyway, this is a beautiful time of the year to be down here in this part, and the weather's just been gorgeous. And the one thing, my wife came with me on this trip, and you know, it's always nice to bring your loved ones along. As a matter of fact, well, she and I have been married for 58 years. Put him right out there. Stand up, take him out. Let's see. Woo! I'll turn 78 back last June the 3rd. It'll be 79 the coming June the 3rd. And if I last that long, and I hope I do. But it's been a long road to travel, and I wouldn't trade it for anything with my wife and my family. My son is here also. I don't know what he's doing. Maybe running the lights up there or something. He does a lot of that sort of work. Randy and his wife Barbara. And we come down here, and every time we come down here, we love it and love it more because it's such a beautiful place and have a lot of fun, especially with you folks out here tonight. Today, it's always a pleasure to play here because you're always so friendly and receptive to what we do. I ain't figured out what we do yet, but I guess you call it musicians. I'm too nervous to steal, so I have to do this now. Everything I know. I can't do nothing else. Mow grass. I can do that. But with the guys back with me, everybody, but Big Tom's here, and this has been a fun trip already. We spent a couple of days here and there and went over to play a Cocoa Beach at Heidi's Jazz Club for a couple nights. That's the time if you ever get over to Cocoa Beach, go see Heidi. A great little jazz place. And we had a night off last night, which was a bonus. We hunted and we finally found some stone crab claws. Listen, when you get them things in your teeth, you just ain't no way. You've got to have them again. This word's some dough. High on stone crabs is the best you'll ever have. Anyway, we're here to entertain you, like I said. I want to do a little New Orleans now. You know, New Orleans has really been hit bad with these storms and stuff. Katrina really wiped a lot of folks out over there, and they're trying to get back to where they were, or even halfway where they were. But they're doing pretty good, and it's not totally bad yet. But I'm sure they'll come out of it and be much better after a while. We're going to do a little tune. Give me a little tune. Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans? To miss it each night and day? Yeah, I know I'm not wrong, 'cause it feels getting stronger the longer I stay. It got some lost sugar pines and tall sugar pines where mockingbirds used to sing. I'd like to see that old muddy Mississippi scurrying on into spring. Well, the moonlight on the bayou will Tuesday fill the air. I dream of magnolias in June. Soon I'm wishing that I were there. Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans? Now that's where you left your heart. Oh yeah, there's just one thing more. I miss the one I care for more than I miss New Orleans. anymore. Pete's still around there. Maybe floating out there on the log playing that clarinet. But he can still play a lot. I've just played with those guys. It's been years since I've seen him play with them. But used to do some recording. Matter of fact, my job in Nashville for a long time was playing backup musicians to a lot of us guys that came in there to record. And with Al Hurt, I recorded Job. I remember his big record, Job. I played the baritone saxophone on that song. A few more hits along in there. I remember back in 1959 recording with a little gal about this tall, Brenda Lee. She's still that tall. Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. You hear that quite often. I played the saxophone on that record. And there was other songs she recorded. Dum Dum Quiddly Dum. I never figured out what that meant. Did you watch the Grammys last night? The song that won the Song of the Year was Something to Behold. That's all I got to say. Well, they call it rap. I've got another word for it. And back when 1963, when the Beatles came to this country, you know, when they got off that plane and walked out there with their little weird haircuts and trashy looking people. Yeah. Oh, wow. What are we headed for now? For friends? Compared to what we got now, they look like a bunch of Baptist preachers. I mean, these kids nowadays, they got green hair, they got a bolt through their nose, spark plug hanging on their ear. They're ready for something, but I don't know what it is. Don't want to know. Going to do a little tune. We try to play music that fits all these states. It's hard to get them all involved in. Here's one called Georgia on My Mind. tune in Nashville the other night. Some lady was sitting right on the front row right after we played it, looked up there and said, "Well, I never did like that country music until I heard it played like that." Whatever keeps your knickers up, put on. A lot of saxophone players are still in the world, but there's a lot of them not around anymore. Some of my favorites, a lot of people ask me, did you try to copy or emulate any of the great players from the past? And of course I did. I've been around a long time. Some of those great ones were still living and playing great when I first started playing. One of my favorites right early was a guy by the name of Coleman Hawkins. Coleman Hawkins was probably the grandfather of the tenor saxophone. He was probably one of the greatest jazz players. But there were certainly a lot of other players as well that was maybe they were. They all played differently back then. Nowadays they all kind of sound alike, but back there they all had a different style. Ben Webster was another great player. Lester Young. And one of my favorites of all time, his name was Don Byas. A lot of folks never heard of Don Byas. But he had some songs out that I thought were just wonderful, and he was one of the best musicians. I'd like to play an old song that Don recorded back in probably in the late 40s, early 50s, back when these just single track studios and recordings at that time. But I still love to listen to one of his songs, and I want to try to play it for you. It's called Candy. chance to get back into the archives, got to find that record by Don Byas, Candy. It's just one of the greatest ones I've ever heard, and I love to play it. Can't begin to play it as well as he did, but he sure is a great player. Going to do a little tune. I'm making a new CD. People come up to me and say, "Are you still recording anything?" And we've been, throughout the years, we've recorded several CDs since I quit recording for Monument Records back in the 80s, I guess. And I've got one that's got some spiritual songs on it. I've got one that we call Nashville Standard Time. It does a lot of the hits that came out of Nashville. This new one we're working on, I'm going to play Candy in it, and some of the songs that I had never recorded in my career. So this one here is, I think, a good old song, and everybody kind of likes it. We're going to play some more from that CD in a few minutes, and we'll tell you about it. But right now, here's Love, L-O-V-E, Love. mentioned the CDs. We brought some with us, not the new one, of course. It hasn't been finished yet, but we'll have it one of these days. But check out what's out there in the lobby. I believe we've got somebody out there peddling our wares. We've got some CDs, and mustard seed bracelets. Two chenille bedspreads left. But we're going to take a little short break. You are having a good time today? I hope you enjoy it. I understand there's a little refreshment bar out there that you might want to go out and try a couple shots, drinks, sips. Get with it. We'll be right back. Play a whole lot more music for you. Thank you. Temptation. That was a turning point for me in my career when I first started down in Nashville. Now, that was a time back in the 50s, 1958. You can imagine me walking in the studio in Nashville, Tennessee, with this thing in my hand. Them hillbillies looked at me and said, "Is he going to toot it or shoot it?" But we finally got on the train with the rest of them, like I say, and play a little country music here and there, and rock and roll and stuff. That last song that I played, "Just Shout Of Your Smile," after I played yakety sax and recorded a bunch of other stuff, we finally said, well, let's play something pretty and kind of soft and maybe a little jazzy. So I recorded an album called Boots with Strings. And that particular song was the lead song of that album, and it sold over, got a million seller gold album in a very short time. Of course, yakety sax had been out before, and I had the gold album on it, so I do have two of those. I don't know, we quit counting back there several years ago. And when, of course, Benny Hill, you know, the funny guy from England, used my song for his theme song. Some guy called me up one day and said, have you watched the Benny Hill show? I said, no, I didn't watch it. He said, well, you should. So I turned it on, and sure enough, at the end, they played yakety sax. Well, it was a different day in my life from there on out. We don't have to steal hubcaps anymore. I walk in and, now here's Boots ran out playing yakety sax. The kids didn't know what the hell it was. One day somebody figured out it was a Benny Hill theme song. Well, I was a hero for the kids. Got a lot of talent up here on this stage, as you already been hearing all night, but not all afternoon. I want to feature Steve over here at the piano. He's a great player, but he's a great singer. He's going to sing a kind of a swinging version of a great old song called Route 66.
If you ever plan to mow the west, travel my way, take the highway, that's the best. Get the kicks, Route 66. Go through Chicago to LA, going 2,000 miles all the way. Get the kicks, Route 66. St. Louis, Joplin, Missouri, Oklahoma City is mighty pretty. You'll see Amarillo, Gallup, New Mexico, Western Arizona, Daytona, Kingston, Boston, San Bernardino. When you get hit to this kind of trip, when you make that California trip, get your kicks, Route 66. Missouri, Oklahoma City is mighty pretty. You see Amarillo, Gallup, New Mexico, Western Arizona, don't forget Winona, Kingston, Boston, San Bernardino. Won't you get hit to this kind of trip? When you make that California trip, get your kicks on Route 66. Get your
know why she said that. Yeah. This next tune that I'm going to play for you happens to be one of the great standards of all time. And I'm not sure of the year. I think it was 1929. Thelonious Monk wrote this song. He was the funkiest guy ever walked. You know that? He really was. He was a great writer, played really cool piano back in the 30s and the 40s and whatever. But he wrote this one song. It's one of the great standards. We've got a few little arrangements. I think it's called Round Midnight.
Oh,
nice chords in it too. We're going to do a little medley of a couple of those spirituals I spoke about earlier. It's my CD is called Songs for the Spirit. I love to play those old church hymns. That's what they are, Old Rugged Cross and some of the great standards of all time. Everybody's sung these in church for many, many years. Here's a couple starting off with Amazing Grace and Closer Walk. this song. Gonna play, do a little different. We always do this when we come here because this is a great little building, and I want you all to know that you're blessed to have a little showroom like this. This is so great. It's nice for us to come here and be able to perform in it. But I wish you'd come here often and visit this place because they've got some great entertainment. Been watching you all play here. And but we love to play here because of the quality of the sound. It's a nice, comfortable place to sit and watch a show. And we're going to do something kind of special as we do every year and try to play a little tune differently. We're going to play Stardust for you. And we're going to do it without the PA set and see if it does let you know what we really sound like. Not good, but you can't miss the Stardust, so I'll get it for the milk. But, you know, a lot of the bands, you go out to hear these rock bands, and buddy, I mean, they're up there. They're pretty loud. They're not pretty loud, they're damn loud. I mean, they'll blow your ears out. Well, I think there's other ways to play music besides that, and I happen to believe that the natural acoustics of a building a lot of times tells you the quality of that building. And, you know, back around the turn of the century, not this one, the last one. Somebody might remember that. Anyway, they built a lot of great music halls, like in New York, it's Carnegie Hall. Up in Boston, it's Symphony Hall. We have one in Nashville that's been around a long time. It's the old Ryman Auditorium. In there, it's a grand old opera. They call it the Mother Church of country music, but the sound in it is just wonderful. So we'll give you an idea of what we sound like without all the PA set and everything. So here's Stardust Unplugged. We can only do that with that one song, nothing else works. But there comes a time as Darrell Royal, you remember the great coach down in Texas, he was a great coach and he made a lot of little witty sayings. And one of them was, you better dance with what brung you. Friends, we're getting a pig, what brung us? Yakety sax, let's do it. You've been a great audience today, and I hope you all enjoyed yourself. As soon as we get things sold up here, we'll be out there and sign a few autographs for you folks. God bless you, and thank you for coming out. Here's Yakety Sax, I hope.